Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our morning coffee time for Sunday, July the 26th. And as I see many people have recognized in the chat, today is Lumpur Pasano's birthday. So I doubt he's on the stream right now, or maybe we'll ever see this, but happy birthday, Lumpur. So Lumpur was the abbot of Wat Nanachat when I arrived back in the early 1990s, and was the Acharya, from which this Thai word Ajahn comes from, who accepted me to stay and pursue training and ordination at Wat Nanachat. So he's very much my father, my first father, and we have many fathers in our Sangha, but he's my first father. And actually didn't get to train with him so much other than that first initial time period, because he went away on a longish sabbatical. When he came back, I was living in branch monasteries. So most of the time I spent living with him and training with him was at Iddhipāda, where he lives now. So in 2 days, we will celebrate Lumpur Saṃyutta's birthday as well. So, and he's like our grandfather for the international monks or the Western monks. So we have a lot of senior monks and abbots who are Leos. So Lumpur Pasano's birthday kind of kicks off a whole parade, our own version of the Pride Parade, a Pride of Lions. So I can't remember the exact date, but I think Ajahn Brahm's birthday is today as well, or sometime soon. And Ajahn Yanako, the current abbot of Iddhipāda, he's also born in mid-August, like myself. No, Ajahn Yanako's in like August 12th, and Ajahn Kurundamo and myself, our birthdays are one day apart in the middle of August. So I have no faith in astrology whatsoever. But it's a curious fact that we have so many abbots whose birthdays come in the summertime. So anyways, as I hope everyone is all too aware, today the fifth talk in Ajahn Sona's series on the jhanas will premiere today at 1 p.m. And if people have an opportunity to tune into that live, there's some special thrill there knowing that everyone's eyeballs are on the same thing. And I believe they leave the chat on too, so you can say hello to all your friends and fellow Ajahn Sona admirers, students all over the world at 1 p.m. today on his YouTube channel, and then we'll have him here tomorrow with good luck. We'll have him here tomorrow to take questions from people, so have that to look forward to as well. I was scrambling all morning between morning meditation and going live 2 minutes late. My main video light is either broken or acting up. So it worked fine this morning for morning meditation, but when we got it set up in the office, it was not working. So I was scrambling for the last 45 minutes, trying to fix that and try to set up some suitable alternative. So whatever spaciousness I might have developed this morning, my meditation seems to have evaporated. So I think I'll just take some questions today and see what's on everyone else's mind. Maybe starting with a two-part question from Eleanor. Was letting go difficult for you? How can we make it easier? Should we force ourselves not to do this or that? Or should we meditate enough so that letting go becomes more easily, so that letting go comes more easily? Sometimes when we force ourselves not to have something, it results in us having even more of it when we finally cave into our urges. Yeah, good question, Eleanor. I'll leave aside that first part of it of how easy or difficult letting go is for me. I'm still in the process of learning to let go, practicing becoming adept at letting go. But how can we make it easier? It doesn't come through an act of mere will. The Buddha's really clear about this. It's not through mere wishing and wanting that one sort of transforms themselves. He proposes what we might call a very naturalistic kind of model, building causes and conditions. So there are supports, there are causes, there are conditions that need to be cultivated to allow ourselves to experience the ability to sort of let go. And some of it can come about in a way that feels like intentional, purposeful, willful, but a great deal of it is really just the fruition of the development of the path and the conditions that one develops through this kind of energetic devotion to cultivating the good and purifying the mind. As Ajahn Sudanto says sometimes, I really like, has a rhyming quality to it. There are problems that need to be solved, and then there are problems that will merely dissolve, or something to that effect. And I was just listening to an interview he pointed me to this morning about a neuroscience researcher at Stanford. He was talking a lot about transformation and neuroplasticity, and in particular, what it takes to change an adult brain. And I won't get into the weeds, but change does not, the science seems to be pointing to change not coming from a mere act of wishing and wanting, like certain conditions need to be built there. There is a role for seeing something as important and having focus. Maybe I'll say it in that way, which is fairly general. So when I would say we need to see the important opportunity that there is in the cost of enduring the kind of dukkha that most human beings are all too willing to endure, various bad habits and emotional afflictions. And it doesn't even dawn on many people that there's all that much that could be done about it. So if there isn't that sort of sense of faith and awakening and the recognition that there really is nothing more important than sorting out the habits of dukkha, sorting out our habits of suffering. And then it does take like intention and focused awareness, but that's not enough. I mean, we have to develop various causes and conditions. And, one of the things this neuroscientist was pointing to in terms of neurochemistry and conditions of mind is the importance of something that I think probably serenity and the power of these serene states of jhana sort of probably bring to us that allow transformation. There's a very, very interesting simile in the suttas about the honed and heavy acts, talking about how the defilements are cut off. So like cut off forevermore, like not to reemerge. So you're not just merely dealing with greed, hatred, and delusion in a temporal way. I mean, actually transforming your whole relationship to those afflictions of mind forevermore. And one of the images in the suttas is like cut off like a palm stump, so like a palm tree. We don't have those here in the Northwest, so I don't have great firsthand experience with them. But apparently when you cut down a palm tree, it doesn't regrow, unlike other trees. So, and this simile of the honed and heavy axe is like you need two things. You need sharpness and you need weight or mass. So like you can have something that's terrifically sharp, say like a razor blade, but if it has little mass, there's many things that cannot sever. Then you can have something very mass intensive or heavy, but it's too blunt to do the job. So you need something that is both honed and heavy. And this is a simile for the mind that is endowed with the factors of enlightenment. And in particular, this is serenity and insight. And you need the sharpness of wisdom and insight, and the heaviness or the mass, I would say the power of the mind refreshed and imbued with jhanic serenity. So when the Buddha talks about the work that the jhanas are doing in the Eightfold Path is to sort of make the mind energetic, powerful, wieldy, and malleable. So, which is a clue. It's pointing to like that is a way, a means, a tool to kind of get the mind into a state where it's in its fittest to actually have a transformative experience. And we know what the opposite of it is. It's the difficulty of letting go. It's the difficulty of change. It takes more than a mere good idea or a mere recognition that we would be better if we could do this or do that, or leave off this, leave off that, from the various habits that we have. Mere wishing and wanting isn't sufficient. So, like everything, how does letting go come more easily? Cultivating the path, developing the path. So good question, Eleanor. Thank you for that. Good morning, Debbie. Lumpur Pasana was the first monk you ever gave alms food to. Amazing. Was that when he came up for our first katina? Our first paba, maybe? Interesting. Good morning, Douglas. What keeps you going or positive during difficult periods of your practice? Well, I don't know that I'm always positive during difficult periods of my practice. The thing that keeps me going is my faith in awakening, and I don't think there's anything better that one can do with their life than to make some sort of long-term durable commitment to trying to understand the habits of suffering, trying to realize this is dukkha. These are the causes. This is how it arises. This is how it ceases. And sure, there's times where we feel doubtful, frustrated. There's times where one kind of wants to give up. It's a difficult paradigm to kind of live within, constantly identifying how it is that you're suffering and trying to build the conditions to understand and overcome it. But I'd say the thing that keeps me going the most is just beyond my sort of faith. It's like this sort of sense of like, what else are you going to do? You can't hide from this. There's no superficial change that one can make in their life to dodge these habits and the inclination to states of greed, hatred, and delusion. And I suppose some people would think it a curse, but I can't give up. I can't bury my head in the sand or in the bottom of a bottle or through endless distraction. And that doesn't always feel like a state of positivity or hopefulness. I guess I see it more as like the ultimate challenge or conundrum. Here we are, and absent some sort of very deep, transformative insight into how to live correctly, we're subject to dukkha. And there's just no place you can hide from that. So you might as well try to figure it out as best as you can and keep trying to make positive steps in the right direction. There is, the Buddha warns about danger of backsliding, and that's all too possible. So I can barely bear the amount of suffering I have now. So I don't want to make any changes that are going to add more to my plate. So you guys are probably way ahead of me, but Sumana, I like your comment here to Eleanor. I think you described the difference between letting go and pushing away. I found things fall away when I contemplate and put in place supportive conditions in that way. I think as we cultivate the path too, I mean, as we cultivate the path and the conditions are there, like the mere recognition that we're perpetuating suffering or that we're experiencing suffering, oftentimes is enough for us to let go. So like you see yourself getting anxious or wound up about something or angry about something, like the more our wisdom faculty grows and we see how this is suffering, we understand, at least on some level, that this is not the right course of action, just to allow ourselves to slide into these states. We let go. Just in the same way when you recognize you're harming yourself, you let go. Part of the reason we don't let go is we don't fully see or understand the harm and the opportunity to let go. Good morning, John. How was the Buddha able to recall past lives? Well, the base of his psychic powers for recalling past life is these deep states of serenity. And while not everybody that cultivates the jhanas will have access to those powers, um, that is the path to cultivating them. So, and there's a belief amongst some that, if one has the right accumulated karma, are that the attainment of those states sometimes just unlock those capabilities. Like one's obstructed from those super normal states of mind because they're afflicted with hindrances in a profound way. And so, like the cultivation of the jhanas. So, and another way to answer that question is the four Iddhipādas. So look up the teaching on the four Iddhipādas, which is what's the translation of the Iddhi? Like an Iddhi is literally one of the words they use for a psychic power, and then pada is like foot or foundation or path. I believe. I might be wrong. Oh, good morning, Phil. How would you access the podcast you were referring to? Oh, it was a recent episode of the Joe Rogan podcast, which Ajahn Sudanto recommended to me. I'll look up the name of the Stanford researcher that he interviews. I only listened to maybe the first 45 minutes or hour while I was making coffee and getting things ready this morning, but it's fascinating. I'm going to listen to the whole thing, and maybe then once again, because there was lots of interesting references to research going on, including research into hypnosis, which I've always wanted to kind of learn about more or read about more, because I've always been kind of curious, like, is it a real thing? I'm pretty sure it is a real thing. And how does it relate to various meditative states? So, and he has a colleague at Stanford, whose name I think is David Sinclair or something like this, who's a researcher and expert in that. So it is the Joe Rogan podcast number 1513, where he interviews Andrew Huberman, Huberman. So twice recommended now. Once by Ajahn Sona to me, and once from me to you. Good morning, Moria. Recognizing dukkha and not letting it take up real estate in your mind is a gift. Lumpur Pasano talked last night about creating more light in the mind than the dark elements tend not to stay. That's nice. So that's probably on the Iddhipāda podcast or YouTube channel. I didn't know Lumpur gave the talk last night. Nice. Good morning, Charles. In Vipassana, one is asked to sit with the eyes closed. However, when sitting with a Zen group, the instructions are for one's eyes to be lowered. Could you comment on likely differences? Let's see, I'm trying to remember in the Anapanasati Sutta if there's an instruction to close the eyes or not. It's not coming to mind right now, but one of my first teachers in Thailand was Ajahn Buddhadasa, and he actually recommended keeping the eyes open when one meditates. And one, just for, it brings a little bit extra light and energy into the mind. And, this is something I suggest people experiment with. I sometimes meditate with my eyes open, sometimes even for a whole half hour, 40 minutes, rarely for a whole hour because the eyes become tired. But Ajahn Buddhadasa, one of my first teachers, recommended that you start with your eyes open and then direct attention to the breath. And I can't remember his exact reasoning other than it's good for energy or whatnot, but the usefulness I find in it is I have a lot of mental imagery when I close my eyes. And especially early on when I was first starting to meditate, sometimes that would just become overwhelmingly distracting. And by keeping the eyes open and then just focusing them very softly in front of you, not looking at anything particular, but just keeping the eyes open, looking maybe 6 feet in front of you, soft focus, it can enhance awareness of the event of the breath. And Ajahn Buddhadasa says, there need not be even an act of will to close the eyes. At some point, if the mind becomes serene enough, generally they will close on their own. So that's something people can kind of experiment with. I find it useful. I think, when our eyes are open, we're probably triggering some brain activity that's connected with focusing, and maybe that acts as a bit of an aid for people. And that might be useful in addition to just the extra energy that comes from light, and also this phenomena I described where if you have a lot of distracting visual imagery, your mind becomes kind of dreamlike when you close your eyes. And we have all these kind of habits of drifting off into what's called the internal sense experience. So just as we have external sense experiences, like in the model of the Buddhist mind, they also talk about the internal sense space. So, when my eyes are open and I look across the room, I see my little video light over here. So, and in the way that's modeled in Buddhism is there's the eye faculty, there's the object, and then there's eye consciousness that arises dependent on those two things meeting. So, and just as that can happen externally, the way it's described happening internally in Buddhism is there's still the eye faculty, and it apprehends an internal object, which is mind created. And there's internal sense contact. So keeping the eyes open can maybe help put you in almost like this no man's land. There's like a soft focus. You're not really looking at anything externally, but because the eyes are not closed, you're also not looking at anything internally. And I'm totally unfamiliar with instructions given in by Zen groups or Zen teachers and what their reasoning might be there. If I had to guess, I would say it would probably have something to do with developing a practice where you're really trying to establish a very present moment sort of experience, not attaching to anything. So maybe they're also playing upon that same thing where you're not looking at some external or internal thing. Don't know. Would you say practice is central to this persistence? No, excuse me. Would you say patience is central to this persistence in a way that is not grim determination? When I'm despondent, I come back to patience. Absolutely. I mean, part of what makes it grim is the tanha that's there, the desire for things to be different. So, we think things should be easier than they are. I should be further along than I am. I shouldn't suffer in this way. We're longing for it to be different than it is. We're impatient. We're in the grip of some sort of doubt. We're wavering. The mind's wavering. Faith in ourself and our ability to awaken hijacks the mind. And what makes it grim is the dukkha that accompanies all those various unskillful ways of emoting and thinking. Patience should not be grim determination. Patience should be infused with love and acceptance. True patience. Aversion and stress. Stress is what makes it grim. And stress is just another word for dukkha. That's what makes it grim determination and not really true patience. True patience, I think, is infused with some sense of goodwill and equanimity. Good morning, Carson. When you recognize you're harming yourself, you let go. This is a great way, Ajahn. Such a personal way of looking at dukkha and letting go. Yeah, my favorite image for this is like a toddler. And, as they're getting into that stage where they can walk around and touch everything, open every cabinet, and they're testing out their environment, testing out their world, it's inevitable they're going to get near the stove. And mom has to say, don't touch that. You'll get hurt. You'll get harmed. And I bet you every kid has to touch the stove at some point. Mom's injunction is not enough. You got to test it out for yourself. but only once. Like when you know through experience that that hurts and that's harmful, you don't have to it's not through an act of wishing and wanting or will, or mom doesn't have to come over and remove your hand. Like once you realize the pain and know it for yourself, experience it clearly, you will be transformed. So maybe a hard case might have to touch it twice, but I mean, most kids don't have to touch it more than once to really learn that lesson of, okay, that hurts. And so that's kind of like an image. Just imagine this glowing hot electric element on the stove. After you've had a very clear experience of what it feels like to burn your hand, you'll be very heedful in the future not to do that. And so it's similar, like when we realize we're carrying around a hot coal, or we're burning ourselves in some way, then letting go becomes very natural and automatic. Okay, well, we're kind of getting on past our time for this morning. So I see people leaving too, so that's my cue. All right, everyone. One thing I didn't announce this morning is if anyone locally wants to come help out with some of the weeding and work around the monastery, we really could use some help. I was out working on the pond yesterday, and there are lots of things I cannot do there. So if we have any people who want to come, the pond is kind of like in the front of the monastery. You won't be disturbing the monks, and it's a lovely place to spend a little bit of time in the morning or the afternoon if you live in the gorge, or if you want to drive out from Portland and do a little weeding and help clean the pond up a little bit. So we just put some new sprinklers out there, and the lilies are blooming in the upper pond, and we're trying to get the waterfall going. So on a warm day, it's a nice little place, and it'd be a great help to us. So if anyone's interested in that, or we have other chores as well that we could use some help with, fire me off an email, and come and we'll find a time where you can come and help out. So, all right, be well, friends, and I'll see you all tomorrow morning. I probably won't be in, I'll have visitors, so I won't be able to tune in at 1 p.m. for Ajahn talk today. I'll listen to that later. And tomorrow, with good luck, we will have Ajahn Sona here to answer some questions. So, be well, friends.